Hello, everyone. Thank you and welcome to RoboMQ's November webinar. We thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule today to join us. What we're going to be focusing on today will be going through and discussing one of the most sensitive and critical operational processes in any organization, the offboarding and termination. So whether that's voluntary resignation, an involuntary or sensitive termination, or the leaver stage in the JML lifecycle, despite advancements in identity and access management, many organizations still face a serious challenge. Terminated employees walking away with data, retaining access to critical systems, and this can happen to a variety of reasons, whether that's incomplete or non-automated offboarding workflows, termination requests that slip through the cracks, or we all know our system admins are very overworked and unable to maybe process these removals in a promptly time process. These gaps not only create compliance risks, but they also expose organizations to potential data breaches and other serious security incidents. And no organization should have to wait until the end of a business day to terminate a departing employee or revoke those accesses. These delayed terminations can introduce significant risk, including unauthorized data access, compliance violations, and even potential financial or reputational damage. Imagine being a HIPAA, SOC 2, ISO 27001, or data privacy framework compliant organization and failing to enforce 100% timely access revocation for departing users. Every single missed or delayed offboarding event can jeopardize your certifications, trigger audit findings, and expose your organization to costly incidents. With that being said, today we have with us Braun Gupta, Head of Product at RoboMQ, to walk us through how you can implement zero-touch automation of employee offboarding with HR as a source of truth. Braun is a seasoned expert in identity and access governance and a passionate advocate for automating JML, the joiner, mover, leaver lifecycle management. With a deep industry experience, he will show us how Hire to Retire automates the offboarding process for your organization. There is a Q&A section and chat box in the, you can be able to put those questions in. And after the session, we will go through those questions after Braun goes through his presentation. With that being said, I will hand it over to Braun.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining the call. So we recently started this whole series of webinars which are on joiner, mover, and leaver. We have already done J of joiner, M for mover, and today we are at the leaver. And I'm starting to share my slides. There's no webinar good enough if you don't have slides shown. So I'll definitely bore you with it before I get into the product. So the way I'll go through is we'll go through the setting, the context, the capabilities, business problem, the benefit that automating the leaver can provide. After going through a couple of slides, and I'll jump straight into the product and we'll show you how Hire to Retire achieves it. In that product demo, I'll initially get into the initial setup, just to make sure that Hire to Retire can do the job, because there's so many dependencies involved before just focusing or zeroing in on the termination part of it. Once we have set the setup and what all it can do and how things are related, we'll get into the termination process, how it is handled by Hire to Retire in what Jordan said, zero touch, scheduled, timely termination that we can achieve. And then I'm going to get into a little more details around governance and reporting and the analytics, because that is definitely something which is important or is on top of mind of most CISOs and most identity management and technology organization, given the nature of the industry and the nature of the data and cybersecurity and the geopolitical environment we are in. Then we'll touch upon the BI capabilities, advanced analytics, reporting, and other capabilities, which can help you meet your compliance and security requirements. So with that, I'm going to jump straight into it, getting into why the joiner, mover, and leaver is important, and especially in that context, why the employee offboarding is very important thing to worry about. This is the data. We didn't create it, but this is from the public sources as to what is the impact of the data breach. And often it is tied to poorly managed offboarding, somebody having the access and leaving with it, It could also be somebody had the access which is not correct, right? Sometimes you end up having people who have access which could be that flag, like somebody who's a sysadmin having access to finance system. Things like that could be a that flag. And then at the time of the offboarding or somebody leaving, maybe a disgruntled employee, sensitive termination, these further exacerbate the risk around it. So that's very important, right? I mean, I know it's very difficult to give a number to it. It is not like onboarding where we can give you direct cost saving numbers and say, okay, this is the value of onboarding. In case of offboarding, it's a risk. How you value the risk, how you quantify the risk, what is the cost of exposure to risk. I think those are the elements which really say what is the cost of not doing a timely employee onboarding. Now, getting into the JML, again, as I said, I'll be mixing up the things so that to set the context in the way. In this particular webinar, we're going to get into the leaver process, the offboarding process, and what happens on offboarding when that offboarding activity is started in the HR system. Just remember that HR is a source of truth that maintains the full continuity as well as consistency of the business processes or identity and access management processes within the organization. Somebody is terminated in HR system, be it a scheduled termination, be it a resignation, or be it immediate termination. Upon that, hire to retire acts and acts immediately to make sure that the employee is terminated, access is removed, a mailbox is converted, and so on and so forth, which we'll definitely see in more detail. So I don't have to read everything in there. Now, from a offboarding perspective, these are the four core elements: business continuity. So business continuity, we make sure that there's a policy-based shared mailbox conversion so that the emails coming in as well as whatever data and important information was in email. And our mailboxes are like treasure trove of information today. So that is assigned to somebody, possibly manager or somebody else, and that remains in place with the organization. Setting up out of office, you don't have to do it specifically set it up. You just templatize it on the product because you have access to HR information, identity information. You can create a standardized templates and they get executed upon share mailbox termination conversion, as well as making sure the emails are forwarded to the right people, manager or others. Similarly, the OneDrive reassignment so that the data which might be sitting in the OneDrive, even if you have policy that we don't keep important information on your OneDrive versus on SharePoint, there's still information that get assigned to manager. Organization gets immediately updated. Everybody knows that org change has happened. Nobody has to do anything. It's all done as soon as we get the information from the HR system. Similarly, the communication across the organization as needed. This can again be personalized and templated so that you don't have to do it on an ad hoc basis. Rather, it's a well executed, well orchestrated process. So that's just make sure that employee termination or departure doesn't impact the business. That's a business continuity. Then the second one, which is important, especially in case of offboarding, is timely zero-touch execution. If somebody has resigned and your organization has chosen 6 p.m. as a time when employees access and everything else is terminated, it has to be 6 p.m. It has to be 6 p.m. if you want for the local time zone of the employee. So 6 p.m. in LA and 6 p.m. in New York, they're two different things, and system will honor and make sure it happens. Immediate termination has to be executed immediately. It doesn't matter how long the person has to be paid from a payroll perspective, but from an IT access and entitlement perspective, immediate termination is executed. Similarly, taking care of things like account is allocated to OU, and you might have policy for deletion of account upon aging, which is also dependent upon treatment of the shared mailbox. We have all of those levers on the product so that you can make the choice appropriate to your organization. The third important thing is access and entitlement revocation, most important, where all the access privileges, including access to SharePoint sites, team sites, and third-party system. We have an inbuilt SIM gateway, which has connectors for 500 plus applications. So we make sure that privilege, access, entitlements all are removed. The account is disabled. They are logged out of all sessions so that they're effectively out of the organization. And then you can integrate with ITSM system, support some 12 or 13 of those so that you can create the ticket so that resources can be collected and any other human workflow or human approvals that have to be executed can be taken care of it. The last but not the least is audit logs and change data capture. So when we process the termination, we'll be capturing the information we got from HR. When was the termination sent to us? What was the effective time of the termination? Then we have a change data capture of what was done on the IT side. How did the employee's profile was updated or changed or terminated, as we call it? Then how did the access and entitlements were removed? All of that is put in. Along with it, we have reporting, observability on the screen, as well as you can export it. You can schedule the report so that you can, instead of doing these things, which is fully done by the platform, you move from a model of doing things versus managing things, using the observability and the reporting available. We also have BI capabilities, which is twofold. You can push the data into your BI, or you can use our own BI component, which is Workforce 360 Identity Cloud, which has collection of full change data capture, as well as it syncs the data from the IDP on a daily basis. So it can provide you a timeline view of identity, entitlement, and access progression. You can see who got the entitlement, when was the entitlement removed, how did the employee's profile change through their employment progression in the company. So all of that forms part of the governance and the compliance capabilities that the product provides. Now, jumping into this slide, I mean, this is typical. We show it everywhere, but it is also true. Most of the organization, even today, manage these things either through email being sent to IT from HR or a service desk being created. It is very prominent in the mid-market, as well as it happens in the large organization also. Often it is driven by the ITSM system, which is good. There's at least an accountability, but that accountability does not provide the full zero-touch automation, the reliability, the nature of repeatability, not being error prone that automations do. It cannot be achieved when you have a service desk based integration where humans have to do the work. And at the same time, the cost of human and the opportunity cost of the work they can put their time on is also important. So that is where products like ours come in. And this kind of shows the picture as to how things are typically done, where there's a notification coming from HR to IT, either over service desk queue or the email, and then one or more than one ticket has to be done. It just depends how mature that process is. But again, system automation, integration versus human workflow. That's what we are talking about. Employee offboarding, I think a lot of it is repeat of what I have already talked about, but essentially as soon as somebody's submits a resignation or somebody's terminated or there's a walkout for the sensitive termination, the HR feeds the information or it is automatically collected by HIPAA. I should say that because we integrate over the API. We get that information and we take all the actions, almost everything. I would say with high confidence, 90% and more of what most organizations would like to do, hire to retire will make that happen. Now, coming generally to the problem that we solve as a product, not just about the termination, we manage the full employee identity lifecycle where we manage privileges, we manage access, we do it integration with ITSM or service desk platform so that all things that can be fully automated as well as things which are dependent upon human interactions are taken care of. And it provides a good experience, right? So first day at work, when somebody comes in, he or she is fully situated, have all the access, resources, desktop, workspace assigned to them, so that, and they also show up on the gap so that everybody knows who they are. They can see their picture and say hello on the first day. Then the cost saving, which comes of a system doing the job versus having people do the job. So that's a huge cost saving that comes out of it. And then the last one, which is very appropriate for the discussion today, is timely removal of access. Just like we welcome people, they're all fully situated on the day one. We have to make sure that all the access is removed for good as well as bad, because most of the time the cybersecurity and data security incidents are either orchestrated by the insiders or insider has advertently or inadvertently have some involvement in it. And as a CISO, as a technology organization, you cannot afford to have it. And that's where product like our will help you do that. Now, in terms of the cost saving, this is general observation or general data collection that we have had with our existing customer when they have gone through our product, have used it for a couple of months, and this is what we get. They are able to automate 90% of the activities, and there's a 60% of more of the cost avoidance, which does vary depending upon the cost structure of the company as well as what kind of processes they have or they want to manage through hire to retire. Because everybody uses the product. It is built for everyone, but everybody uses it, personalizes it based on their need. And these are the summary of the what benefit you get using hire to retire. Superior first day at work, making sure the data is always in sync across HR and IT systems, role-based access control and access provisioning, service desk integration, and of course, most importantly, security and compliance. This can be avoided. This will be the last slide, I promise. I'm gonna just show you the context of how things work. You get the data Workday or any of the 20 HR systems plus 6 or 8 of ATS that we integrate with. We get the data from the system over the API. It's fully automated. And then hire to retire will take action based on how you set that up. It will talk to all endpoint. If you're a Microsoft shop, it will talk to Entra-ID, it will talk to Exchange Online, it will talk to SharePoint Online, it will talk to your on-premise AD in a hybrid setup. If you're a Google Workspace, it will talk to Google Workspace. If you're using Okta along with one of these, we can also independently talk to Okta or have a combination of these. So we also see customers where they're using Microsoft as well as Google. We see customers who are using Microsoft and Okta. They have a sync setup, but some of the customers, we do push the data into both these IDP parallelly by running two workflows. Sometimes they also leverage the connectors available with Okta Enterprise Network, as well as Microsoft Enterprise App, as well as what is provided by IS. So you have a huge library of SIM connectors. You're fully covered on that front. Now I'm going to jump into the quick demo. So I'll share my screen of the product. Here it is. So when you get into a workflow, this is what it looks like. This is just a summary of the workflow. I don't have to get into it, but think of it like whatever you configure, it spits it out in English language. Most of the work happens here, and I'm going to get into some of these just to set the context of getting to the termination. So you choose the application, you choose what HR system you have, what ATS you have, you do the API integration, what is your IDP setting, and so on, and then you connect to them. Again, connection is over the OAuth API-based connection, fully secure. We are a SOC 2 Type 2. We are a HIPAA certified, as well as we comply with GDPR and data privacy framework. That is, it's a legally binding contract between the US companies which are processing data of subjects in European Union, UK, or Switzerland. So we are certified on that front, so fully secure. Now getting into the data that we get, right? This is important because what data we get as well as the sensitivity of the data is important. We'll make the call to API. You can set up the parameter, how often you want the data to come in, as well as you can choose the data set that you want to process through into identity, because you don't need a lot of HR data. That's something to very well understand, because initially we often hear, oh, you're going to get a lot of data from HR. Not really. We'll get very basic data. First is basic PII, first name, last name, preferred name, so that we can create the account. We need the ID of the employee so that the profile in HR can be matched to corresponding profile on the identity side. Then we need manager ID so that your org chart is always current, your GAL is always current. And then we need the information like your start date, last day worked, and the termination reason so that we can handle life cycle, whether it's a new hire, it's a rehire, it's a termination, it's a change of role, and with the termination reason, is it a sensitive termination? So that's important for the termination part of it. And then we get a set of information, which is what we call job identifier, your title, department, location, country code, cost center, etc., so that we can put you into the right role-based access control. That's very, very important to do that. And then once you get all of that data, then the next job is obviously, creating the identity profile. And this page itself is like an iPaaS. It provides all data mapping, transformation, lookup, data enrichment capabilities. You can define the lookup tables, which are locally managed in the product itself. You can say, okay, I have the employee with certain characteristics. How can I translate into a value that I want? So that's a data enrichment and lookup. Then you have these functions, and they're very easy to use. You don't have to learn how they work. because they act and behave like Excel functions. They are modeled after it, not using Excel, but they work like Excel. So if you know how to use a left function on Excel, you can use it to do the data transformation. Examples is like this. If you create the common name, and you say, okay, if preferred name is empty, then I'll use the legal name. Otherwise, my policies use the preferred name. And then you can use all these kind of, capabilities to use different plugins or different formats to create your email address, create a UPN. They can be different or same. You can have different domain. We support multi-domain architecture. Also, we also support the forest multi-domain forest architecture. I'm not going to get into that complex scenario, but all of those capabilities are possible. And end of the day, when you get to this point, you have created an account and identity in the identity platform. Now I'm going to jump into role-based access control because we'll be talking about how to remove that. So let's get into how we do it. So when we get to the role-based access control, we support all possible groups available. So with Microsoft, there are 7 of those, OU plus 6 groups managed by either Entra-ID, Exchange Online, and then we have for Entra-ID, of course, there's a limited set. If you go with Okta, it's a different setup. If you go with Google, there are 2 types of groups. We support all of them, depending upon the configuration that we have. But the common thread is that these assignments are based on your role, or it's a ABAC based. So you can choose the attributes of the employee profile, any number of combination, apply all kind of operators onto it. You can do like for example, you can choose these operators, and based on it, you can build complex or simple rules, and where you can say, okay, how does somebody get an entitlement? If you see this, we are reading in real time. So whole of our product is no code, easy to use, intuitive UX and adaptive UX. So if your IDP has certain groups, we'll show you. You don't have to type anything. You don't have to do anything. You can simply select it because it's presenting the experience to you as your setup is. And if you don't find a group and you're working on setting it up, you can add a new group right here. So you don't have to walk away from the platform for doing it. So you do the group assignments. And then there's an access capability, which is what I was talking about, the SIM gateway. You have around 500 or so application, 200 application connectors are created by us. They are very easy to use, simple user experience in line with the spirit of the product. Or you can use Microsoft Enterprise app, which are more geared toward technical users or sysadmin, and you can configure those also. The basic premise is both of these mechanisms work based on RBAC. You put somebody into a certain group, and that group membership makes them eligible to get access either using Enterprise app or using one of the connectors offered by RoboMQ. Our connectors are a lot more rich. Like if you go into the Salesforce, you will be able to not only do the provisioning, but you'll be able to assign them the Salesforce profile, role, and so on and so forth. Again, this is all being read from my Salesforce instance. And in your case, it will be that from your Salesforce instance. So again, adaptive user experience that we provide. So at this point of time, we have set up everything. We have got the employee account created, put them into the entitlement, put them into the access. And now let's get into termination, because that's where we are here for. So termination is just like other life cycle. Termination is one of the life cycle. In addition to hire, rehire, change of role, long-term leave, and termination. I'll jump only on the termination here. We do support litigation hold, so that's important from a termination perspective also. So in termination, we can put the people in the termination OU. I mean, we can purge certain attribute from AD because there's a requirement from the security perspective that after the employment termination, you cannot have that data everywhere spread across, including AD. So that capability is there. Again, advanced one, not everybody uses it. Then what we do is we support scheduled termination, as I was talking. You can choose 6 p.m. and that 6 p.m. if you choose on the last day worked is the time employee's account will be terminated and all the access and privileges will be removed. And this 6 p.m. is time zone sensitive. So it will be local to employee's time zone. And you can apply a policy. You can say, okay, the people who are field workers, 6 p.m. People who are office workers or corporate worker, I want to give little more time, maybe 8 p.m. So you can do all those kind of policy definition. And then we support immediate termination, in which case, if HR gives us a reason, which you say, okay, this reason means immediate termination. We're going to ignore the last day worked and we'll immediately terminate the account. Similarly, you can have this deletion policy where the account can be deleted. You have to be careful that when you delete the account, the shared mailbox goes away. So people make a choice based on the business continuity angle as well as the legal and compliance angle as to after how much time they want to delete the account. Because one is these compliance requirements. Second thing is, when people's account is there, it also has a name collision probability. So people have to make different choices based on your organization need, but we are able to support all of that. And then you have a treatment about the privileges. So you can remove all groups, which is the default mechanism, but you can make certain other choices if you want to have the terminated user still maintain certain group membership for certain specific reason. And then you can also define group specific. You can remove all Microsoft licenses, anything under the Microsoft licensing framework, you can remove it. Nothing has to be done specific. You can give access to OneDrive to the manager. You can convert the mailbox to shared mailbox. You can share it with named user. Of course, you can share with manager. We know who the manager is, remove aliases, change the name, set up out of office. And if you notice it, we are getting these placeholders from the HR data or the identity data. So you can build this template, which is an organizational template for out of office once somebody left. And you can always have the manager's name so that the business continuity angle is there. You can also set up the email forwarding so that nobody has to really subscribe to the shared mailbox. You can straightforward forward the email to the employee manager or somebody else, a distribution list in this case, for example. That way you can maintain the continued business continuity for these people who have terminated with us. So that's a termination, the activity we do. And as I mentioned, the group membership, this everything that they had before was removed. So you don't have to worry about that part. Then we come to communication hub. This is a capability where you can build custom templated email. And when you build these, you can tie it to the termination lifecycle, just like any other. And then this is a rich text editor where you can tie it to termination, for example. And then you can also define a policy. And then you can build this whole format of the email along with this text, which is a rich text. You can add images, documents, and so on. But most important is you can use this placeholder element, and in identity, it could be new as well as previous value of the employee's profile. So with that, you can do the communication like somebody has left. You can do the team communication. You can also say, okay, somebody has left, and you can reach out to this person, whatever, or any other communication that you need to do, you can do it. It's up to you. It's a very flexible feature that we offer. The other thing upon termination is that you may want to create some tickets so that resources can be collected. So for example, if you're using Fresh Service, you can create a ticket. Here it is created on onboarding and offboarding, but you can always create a ticket because you can tie it to a termination, a scheduled termination or immediate termination, and then you can create the ticket. Now here also the user experience is adaptive, which means the fields and the capabilities that are going to be provided here will be based on how you have set up your tickets or your objects in the Fresh Service of your instance. So it will talk to the instance and provide experience which is in line with what you would expect if you would do the same activity manually on the Fresh Service. So you can create the ticket for the source offboarding part. That is what I was really coming down to. So you have terminated the account, logged them out of all session, removed all the privileges, you have removed all the access because the access connectors are gonna work out of the role-based access control. So for example, if I take the Salesforce example, it says that these are the roles which give access to Salesforce because you're defining the condition which are based on employee's profile. And then upon termination, these are removed. So your access and licenses are immediately removed upon termination. So we take care of the access removal upon termination as well. Now we have done everything. Now let's get to the observability, compliance, and reporting part of it. So starting with the observability, I'll zoom in on to termination and I'll pick up the attributes that we have. So this is the termination, right? So it is reporting all the termination that have happened within the time range. And then you can have a full change data capture here. So if you click on this guy, you'll be able to see, okay, what was the information that HR provided about the termination? Then you will see what was the employee's profile before and after the termination happened. And you can also see the value, just the values that have been updated. And then you can see how the employee's profile changed in terms of entitlement. And if you notice, nothing was added, nothing was retained, everything was removed. But if it was a onboarding, this picture will be different. If it was a change of role, you will see all of this, because in change of role, something is added, something is removed, as well as something is retained. But this is strictly the termination that we are talking about. Now, once you can see the data here, you also have ability to apply the filters and export it, or you can simply run a scheduled report. You don't have to come here every day, as long as you know that HR is making the data in HR system, data updates and changes in HR system in a timely fashion. You would also expect from us or the hire to retire that it will do the job without fail. And then that can be monitored by scheduling report, which can be run on a daily basis. You say, okay, yesterday HR says 15 people were terminated. I have that. You can get a report from the HR system, you can get a report from this system, and then you can correlate it. At the same time, this report will have all the data. It will also have the data that HR has, as long in addition to what we did on the identity and entitlement side. So full reporting and change data capture is provided here. What you can also do is there's a capability to reviewing it if you want not to do the termination in autopilot mode, which means as soon as they happen, they execute it. You can run in a supervised mode. Whenever I'm talking to customers, I advise against it, because termination has to happen timely, but you have that ability. In which case, what you do is you basically go to this page, because you'll be prompted or get an email that there's something waiting for your review. You review the changes, whatever that hire to retire is proposing based on what HR provided to us. And then after you review and say it's all okay, you approve it, and then the operation will execute. So it's kind of a staging or the review stage that you have here. Now, getting to another aspect of compliance and audit trail, what you have is you have the capability to send this data into your BI endpoint. So S3, MySQL, or Azure Blob, and you can run your own Power BI or other BI tools and platforms that you have. You can run reporting from there. At the same time, what we did is in Q3, and this has been a long, big project that we have been working for more than a year, we have insourced the BI capability into the product. So what we do is we have this full change data capture, which is data we get from HR, the identity data, and the change data capture about it. On top of it, we do a daily sync with IDP. So we get the information, not sync, it's a one-way pull of the data. I shouldn't use the word sync, because we're not touching the IDP other than the hire to retire workflows or event processing. So we get the data from the IDP, and then we marry it together, overlay it, and we have a full view of employee in terms of how did the employee's identity, entitlement, and things changed over the progression of the employment. So this one has only 2 data points. Maybe I'll pick up something which has 2. Oh, this also has 2. Hopefully, no. Okay, that's all. We'll go with it. So basically, it shows you what was the information when somebody was hired, what was the HR data we received, what was the identity data, how did the entitlements were managed at that, how did entitlements changed across, and then as the employees profile, job profile, responsibility, etc. change, as well as if they get terminated, we are able to provide a timeline view of employees' HR, identity, and entitlement uh, profile. And it's a powerful capabilities, because you see it on us all in a single pane of glass. You have the capability to apply filters, which is based on HR data, identity data, as well as privilege data, and slice and dice this data set, the BI set. You can save the filters. We have these popular searches. So this is an identity centric view. Now you can also see the entitlement centric view. You can see who joined this security group, or when somebody's security access was removed from this. Again, since we have the full timeline view of the changes, we are able to provide a BI capability as well as reporting capabilities on this data, that you can, put the filters and download the report. In addition to it, we also have these scanned reports. These scanned reports are, to a large degree, they are around compliance requirements. So if you see these reports, they are like some of the common reports that you have for the SOC 2 or ISO 27001 or the other NIST cybersecurity reports or the standards. So they can SOC 2 and ISO, there's a requirement to say that, okay, in the review period, who all were hired in the HR system, as well as what corresponding actions were taken on the identity. That's the new hire report. Then there's a requirement to say, okay, how many people were terminated during the in scope or the review period, and then was it timely? So we are able to provide, okay, we received the data from HR at this time, what data we received, and when did we execute the actions which are required to be done for the termination. So you get all of these kind of reports, which is an easy way for you to not only be compliant, but at the same time provide the evidence of your compliance to the auditor. So this is a very powerful feature that we recently added. It is an add-on component, and it doesn't impact your core hire to retire workflow, a part of which we talked today on termination, but can provide a lot of capabilities around reporting and compliance. And this is where the direction of the company is going, since with almost mature processes around JML, identity provisioning, access provisioning, and entitlement provisioning, we are now moving a lot more into the governance and the compliance side of it, much like being able to provide the lightweight, easy to use, no code capability, where you really don't have to have a information security analyst and architect to run the platform, just much like you will do with SailPoint or Savient or Omada. We want to provide this experience into easy to use, very intuitive, adaptive user experience so that you can build very mature identity and access management processes, much like you go with these big boys in our space. And a lot of other customers give that same feedback. They say they compare us to Freshservice. When they compare us Freshservice and ServiceNow, they compare us as a Freshservice for the IG market, because we offer the same attributes of low total cost of ownership, easy to use, not needing such a big team and expertise within your own organization to have mature processes. And that's the direction where the product roadmap has been heading. I think I talked a lot, so I'll take a pause. I know there may be some questions, so please feel free to ask the question, and I'm here to answer.
Awesome. Thanks, Bram. So we actually did get quite a few questions in the chat today, which is great. If we aren't able to address all of them after the call today, we will follow up with you individually to address those questions. And we'll, of course, be sending over a link to the webinar afterwards. But with that being said, I'll jump right into the questions we've received. First, I will say there's a lot of positive comments and exciting comments about that new BI capability, so that's great. So let me skip through some of those. But the first one is, so how does your platform help you eliminate orphaned or lingering accounts after termination?
Orphan or lingering? What do you mean by orphan or lingering?
That was just the question.
That was just a question.
Yeah.
So I'll assume orphan account means somebody has more than one account.
Mm-hmm.
That's a common, because our product also supports. Sometimes you have one primary account and then you have system admin another account. And my apologies if I made the wrong assumption. You can always ask the question over the email and we'll respond to you. So what we do is everything in there, like if you remember the data mapping and transformation, we talked about the employee ID. Very important field: employee ID, associate ID, worker ID, any number of these names that different HR systems use. We use that ID, a unique identifier, as a primary key, which we save in the employee ID and field of the Active Directory, as well as it is a prerequisite when Ben's team starts a customer to be onboarded on our platform. The first step is for each identity, each human identity in the IDP or AD, you must have the employee ID. Once that is established, we manage the life cycle. We make sure that the employee ID is always populated. So in case of this scenario, the orphaned account, one person might have more than one account, but all of those accounts are tied by the employee ID, because AD doesn't enforce that you cannot have two with the same ID. And when we do the termination, we do search across the IDP and remove all the accounts that possibly belong to that person.
Great.
And once we are running this system in continuum or perpetuity, I don't want to call it perpetuity, but in continuum, then the situation that you will have an orphaned account will not be there, because people are always terminated.
Great, thank you. That's actually a perfect segue, because there was a question. So this might be best for Ben, who is our head of customer success. So we are currently in a manual process. are there best practices that the team is able to provide us during implementation?
So the best practice, or at least the best approach for onboarding, is to start thinking about role-based access control, and that can easily be done either by an attribute, be driven by job title, but also trying to get into the mode of what we can automate upfront and what we want to do downstream, or at least after we go live. So originally, a lot of people come to me and say, "Hey, our entire role-based access control internally is a mess." My first question is, well, what does everyone have? Everyone has an email inbox. Everyone needs to have access to Teams. That's clearly a simple rule that you can add. But the real value that a lot of people get out of it almost on day one is for those things to get sorted. And so you kind of, in a way, push out or focus more on the unique cases that, okay, maybe John, he obviously he has Teams, he obviously has Exchange, but he might need more. Why does he need more? And you start to question, why do people need access to do their job? Is it so unique and special that it needs to have special rule? And so usually those questions can take a little extra time on implementation. So you have a choice, do it now or do it later. And I always find it, if you start doing it later down the road, you may start to think maybe he doesn't need it. Maybe we should have a separate role for him. And generally that's kind of how implementation not only just rolls within the small window of like 6 to 8 weeks, but it kind of is a continual thing. So kind of what Ram was mentioning earlier, yes, you could argue it in perpetuity, but keeping these things in mind helps you have a better security posture because you're constantly thinking about roles and what someone needs right now and what they should need. But it also kind of lines you up to being kind of a unified whole firm, if you will, and kind of having a complete profile from start to finish, or as we say, from hire to retire.
Perfect. And I know for time's sake, we only have 3 more minutes, so I think I'm going to address one more question, and we will follow up with you again individually with the other questions we aren't able to address. But one is specifically, they are currently looking at hire to retire and other solutions in the industry. What would be a differentiator specifically for the termination or leaver side of things?
I think it's when they're looking at other alternatives, I mean, there are choices, which is good because if you have a product in a space where there are no choices, either you are in the monopoly or the market doesn't exist. So it's good you have choices, both for us as well as you. Now, depends what is your requirement, right? If you're looking for alternatives at the top end of the market, you have these guys, SailPoint, Saviynt, Omada, Security. They provide very strong compliance capabilities if you're SOX compliant shop and so on. But at the same time, they're expensive. More than the direct cost of license, I think you have to have that right team. You have to have the information security analyst, architect kind of people to be able to manage it. And these are platform. These are not no code self-service products. These are platform which have to be configured, administered, and set up to your needs. Now, if you look at the other extreme end of the market, there are players who specialize in, say, SIM provisioning like Aquera. Then you have Workato, and then so many of our friends from the iPaaS space. There are also some basic data sync tools. Sometimes these data sync tools are also offered by the HR system. So Velocity offers it. I think a few others offer it. SuccessFactors, Workday, they offer it. Now, that is a choice you make when you say, okay, I'm going to move the data into the identity system. Well, it will work very well. I mean, it's a same thing that we have on the data mapping page of ours. It will do the data sync, and then Entry or AD will take care from there. Now, that's where the thing start getting interesting, right? Because it is able to move the data, but it is not able to provide behavior or capabilities. Most of the behavior or capabilities, you will put it through PowerShell scripts. You will do some automation on Entry. You will use some of the capabilities available with Entry or the identity governance offered by Microsoft. So you're going to do a patchwork of capabilities to get to what you will get with hire to retire in a single pane of glass, without having to know the skill, without having to learn something, and just making the choices on the adaptive user experience. So that's a choice. But of course, those products are going to be cheaper. So don't get me wrong, they're going to be cheaper than us, but we are not that expensive, as I said, right? There's the 3 things. In the middle, you look at us, and why you look at us, I think the biggest one is the depth and breadth of coverage around identity, access, entitlement management, very deep integration with Microsoft 365, which you will not often find in other competing product like the shared mailbox and other things I showed you, OneDrive assignment, mail forward, and there's so many nitty-gritty of things. When you get married or more importantly divorced, you don't want to see your old email address, you don't want to see your old name with your last name of the guy you don't want, guy or gal you don't want to be associated with. We take care of immediately, and we maintain the business continuity because your old email address becomes alias, so that somebody sending them email to that still gets it, but your new email is nice looking one, which you want, right? So a lot of those kind of capabilities, we get into that deep detail, and this guy, Ben, whose customers ask all kind of things and keep filling our product roadmap, which is we proudly say it's a customer driven roadmap. So we have a lot of those capabilities. And most important is, other than breadth and depth of capabilities, is the very intuitive, easy to use, adaptive user experience. You can do everything without having any technical skills, as long as you understand the business process. You don't have to type anything, you don't have to remember anything. The product will talk to the endpoint and provide you the experience which is really built for you. You make the choices and move on. You make one choice, it takes you into a different path. You make the another choice, it takes you into different paths. So other than being an active user experience, it is also a guided user experience. Your choices determine the kind of workflow you will define. So the product might look very different to two people, although when we show you the same thing, because we try to cover as much as we can, but you can really customize without really doing any coding. And one another differentiator, which is also kind of our tagline, we are no code, no scripting, and no professional services ever. We don't want to make any money on professional services, and we don't do it. We also provide 24/7 support, which is included in the subscription. We have great reviews on G2, on customer success team. And one of the good decision that we as a business made is we don't have tiers on support. So the team which implements you is the same team which provides 24/7 support, which is what guarantees the higher level of expertise that you get from the support, and it translates and rewards us with great G2 reviews. So these are the major differentiations. So if you're looking for something which has a lower total cost of ownership, lower hassle, zero touch automation, I think you will choose us.
Awesome. Thanks, Bram. So I will wrap it up today. I know we are a few minutes over, and thank you for everyone that stayed for those a couple additional minutes. But I will follow up with the webinar link like I mentioned before. And until then, we look forward to having you on our next webinar next month. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
And have a good weekend before the long weekend.
Yeah. Happy Friday.
Okay, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bye-bye.